roses. Those tariffs are on hold now that Colombia's agreed to allow military flights carrying Colombian immigrants deported by the U.S. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
It's NPR. Hamas has agreed to release 3 more Israeli hostages on Thursday, and Israel is allowing displaced Palestinians to return to North Gaza for the first time since the start of the war. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
Israel and Hamas say they have resolved a dispute involving an Israeli hostage whom Hamas did not release last week as Israel had expected. Hamas has now agreed to free that hostage plus 2 more on Thursday, and Hamas will release 3 additional hostages on Saturday as previously scheduled. In total, 6 hostages will be freed this week, and Israel will release Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Hamas has also given Israel a list detailing the condition of each hostage who will be freed in the coming weeks. In return for these gestures, Israel says it is finally allowing the return of displaced Palestinians to North Gaza. Throngs are now returning by foot. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This year marks 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz by the Soviet Army. An observance is being held at the site of the former death camp in Poland. Nazi German forces murdered more than 1 million people at Auschwitz during World War II. Most were Jews killed in gas chambers. In all, more than 6 million Jewish people across Europe were murdered. Poland's president joined remaining Auschwitz survivors at today's ceremony, which comes during a time of rising anti-Semitism in Europe. I'm Kristen Wright, and this is NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future, and listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
The information presented on this program is meant to provide general information about the topics discussed and is not necessarily the opinion of Mississippi Public Broadcasting. The information presented does not create any type of relationship between the hosts and guests and the listening audience. Please consult an appropriate professional for guidance about your concerns. You're listening to Deep South Dining on MPB Think Radio. To call the show, dial 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 877-672-7464. Or email food@mpbonline.org. This is MPB Think Radio.
Well, good morning and welcome to Deep South Dining right here on MPB Think Radio. Malcolm White with Carol Palmer. Yo. Hello, Carol.
Hey, Mal. How you doing?
You're shuffling over there.
Oh, yeah. Always shuffling papers.
A lot of info.
Lots of info to cover today.
That's right. That's great. Well, it's been a few days since we've been live on the air. We were off last week for MLK. I think
Indeed.
That's right. But we're back, and just a listener's note, next Monday, Feb 3rd, we'll have Stafford Sheridan on the show to bring us up to speed on his new
venture, but
he's got
also,
a new podcast.
Stafford is our buddy who does the tailgate gas station reviews. And
Right on.
I always love to hear what he's doing and what he's eating and what ratings he gives the gas stations.
So Stafford is a restaurateur. He's a farmer. He's a former judge, and he does have this new podcast entity he's going to tell us about. So that's next week. We look forward to having Stafford Sheridan back on Deep South Dining. So, Carol, I brought you a little treat this morning. My wife, Kara, made a delightful apple galette. I have shared it with you there.
Do you hear the snap?
I hear the snap of
snapware?
the snapware. You also had a blondie as a
I had it early.
it's a
Appetizer.
pre-radio warm-up. We also had blondies for the house.
I feel so fortunate. I saw a photograph of this apple galette on Cooking and Coping last night, and of course it sparked my interest. So
do you need a fork, or are you just going to
I've got that. I just wanted whoever is on YouTube to be
know
able.
that.
I hope that
I see.
they can
Okay.
zoom in and see that, because it is worthy. It is worthy.
beautiful.
The crust is absolutely gorgeous, and wow.
As I told you before, I was a little disappointed in the Honeycrisp apples. They're normally better. I don't know what's up with that. Maybe it's this trying to have all groceries all year round, all the time kind of craziness. But either way, the galette is fabulous, and I'm
I
glad.
hate it when the crisp goes out of your Honeycrisp.
It's that time of life.
I know it really is. It's just.
I've also brought you a deep fried wild turkey breast prepared by our friend Malin McAdams, and it's delicious. I've eaten all of the dark meat and one of the breasts, but I brought you the remaining breast so John.
You are so generous, really.
Can have a bit of that deep fried wild turkey.
I think I don't have enough confidence to bring you food, nor is my food. It's what I'm cooking is shareable as your desserts.
Well, it's not me, as you know. It's my wife who primarily makes this stuff.
Late but well.
Anyway, I'm well fed.
I know.
I'm well fed.
We are all better for it.
And I like to share.
I know, and you do. And talk about sharing. We shared a wonderful trip this week.
We did. We got on the road together.
We went.
It had nothing whatsoever to do with Deep South Dining, but we went.
In a way, it did, because it was about Southern culture.
True.
We went to Meridian for the induction into the Mississippi Arts
and Entertainment Experience, MAX.
Hall of Fame.
Into their Hall of Fame. Right.
And it was just a fantastic experience.
Really was. We had a great time. It was at the Riley Center, the historic Riley Theater, downtown Meridian. Robert St. John was the MC, and so many of our friends were involved in so many levels. It was great to see everybody. Mac McAnally received an induction and performed. Tricia Walker performed a Bobby Gentry song.
Yeah, Bobby Gentry was inducted, and our just dear friend Bill Ferris,
correct,
who has just, been an icon of Southern culture in his years at the University of Mississippi, University of North Carolina, and as chairman for the National Endowment of the Humanities. He has, documented, photographed, recorded culture. So we are about Southern culture here at Deep South Dining, and that's what we did.
Natasha Trethewey also was honored.
Wonderful
the former
poet
laureate of the United States and the state of Mississippi. We were so happy to see her.
I was going to ask you, you nominated her for poet laureate of Mississippi.
Yes.
Or as we say in Mississippi, poet laureate, as I said.
We reconstituted the poet laureate position during my time at the Arts Commission, and Natasha was our first choice to be Mississippi's poet laureate. And lo and behold, she was simultaneously appointed the poet laureate of the United States. First and only time that a state and national poet laureate has served simultaneously.
Well,
that was great.
Yeah.
Sade Turner. Sade, it's not the right name. Yeah.
Sade.
Yeah. Sade threw down.
Yep. Did
the fife and drum.
Yeah, the granddaughter of
Otha
Turner, who really, they've really kept this African fife music alive.
As Bill Ferris said, the real roots of the blues. This tradition, this hill country tradition of the fife and drum. But on other news, in other arenas, I will be trying to fulfill the position you had last year down on the coast. On Saturday, Homegrown, a Writers' Exchange, is a book festival on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. This is the third annual Homegrown, a Writers' Exchange. You moderated the cookbook panel last year, and I will be moderating this year. And on my panel are mostly people that we know well and have had on this show. Dale Gray.
Somewhere South. What a wonderful, wonderful book.
That's her book, and her blog is The Daily Plate. Matt Haynes has this book called The Big Book of King Cakes. Now, I don't know Matt. I haven't met Matt, but I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous book. I've seen it, and I've actually heard him speak before, so that will be a very timely subject.
Sure. And we're going to be serving king cake at the festival from Randazzo's in New Orleans. They're going to bring them over to Long Beach, where we'll be. We'll be on campus at the University of Southern Mississippi's Gulf Park campus in Long Beach. Also, Melissa M. Martin will be there. Her new book, Bio, or Bayou, however you pronounce it, formerly, well, not formally, but also of the Mosquito Supper Club. And perhaps Robert St. John will join us. He will be there, not debuting, but presenting his film on Eudora Welty.
Sounds kind of like an Elvis sighting.
Yeah.
Maybe he will.
Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. If you're listening, Robert, let us know if you'll be joining us. But we're looking forward to it. It's a full day of panels, not just food, but all sorts of topics, from how to get published to things about children's literature, and conversations with various writers, including Lee Durkee. So anyway, that's this Saturday, the first day of February. It's presented by the Hancock County Library organization. So that's
good luck
great.
with that, Mal.
Thank you, Carol.
I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's been going on in my kitchen, and I bring this up because I learned so much on our Cooking and Coping Facebook page, and also, from the people that call in and from our guests. And there has been much to do about roux.
That rhymes.
Yes, over the, I didn't mean to, but I
really
did.
Good, Carol. You're a natural.
I know,
you're a
I'm
poet,
a natural.
and you don't know it.
Yeah. But, we've had so much roux conversation, and we've talked, some of our posters talked about dry roux, about baking your roux in the oven, and I believe you weighed in on that.
I've done it that way many times, yes.
Okay, well,
Bobby Cleveland was a great roux oven preparer.
Well, I just wanted to say, the last, kickoff post on roux, our friend Lee Bailey started the conversation, and like 50 people jumped on with their ideas. But I just wanted you personally to know that I failed just as miserably at oven roux as I have in the past at stovetop roux.
Don't give up.
You know what I did wrong? Because I heard you and other people say, it's so easy. You just, you put the flour in the oven and you just bake it at 350. So I, kind of looked it up or Googled or looked at Cooking and Coping, and it said, leave it at 350 for 30 minutes or whatever it was. So that's what I did. And it was a burned sheet pan. I failed to understand that you have to take it out of the oven. And turn it and push it all to the middle and sift it and turn it. And it's as much trouble as stirring it. So I redid it, and it worked great, but for all
you redid it on the stovetop.
No, I redid it.
You went back
in
the oven.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. But for all my
failure is not an option.
roux challenged friends out in Radio Land, if you try the baked method, research it a little bit and just know that you cannot walk away from the stove. I went and watched television or did something.
I think the rule is never walk away from roux, whether it's in the oven or on the stovetop.
I have learned that.
You got to stay with it.
I'm pretty fired up about talking to Ann Taylor Pittman in our next segment, because we're going to be talking about cooking light.
Yes.
And one of the reasons given for doing the baked roux is that it is a lighter, you're not using all of that cup or more of oil. So I want to kind of get her take on it.
That's good.
And there you have it.
So
more to do about roux.
Hey, We had a great shout out from Garden and Gun this past week. Garden and Gun ran a story in their arts and culture section called 7 Southern Radio Programs Worth Tuning Into.
And guess who was in that list?
That's right. Deep South Dining was one of the 7, so we're really happy about that. And we appreciate our friends at Garden and Gun.
And they're becoming better friends by the day, might I say.
Excellent. So anyway, we're really happy about that. And on a more somber note, Carol, we lost a couple of icons here in the last few days.
Indeed. Natalie Dupree, and who just was a major force in Southern cooking. And then yesterday, just the untimely death of Pablo Johnson in New Orleans. And, Pablo was such an interesting character. I mean, he was a photographer, a documenter of Southern food. I first got to know him at Southern Foodways, but he was named one of the 100 all-time best home cooks by Epicurious.
Yeah, I saw that.
Known for his Monday communal red beans and rice.
Right.
He was a red beans and rice man. And he actually developed a show which, we looked into getting here a couple of years ago, where he would bring the red beans and rice to different cities. I know, he had this whole experience. But he photographed second lines in New Orleans, and he collapsed and died yesterday while doing so, way too early in age. But as so many people have posted last night and today, he died doing something he absolutely loved.
Yeah, and what an incredible life. One of the things that he did, I saw in his bio, was that he was kind of a prep cook for many years at the Mosquito Supper Club. Speaking of Melissa M. Martin and the Mosquito Club.
Wow. And Chico Harris sent us Natalie's obituary from the New York Times. And, if you're a Southern cook, there's a pretty good chance that you know Natalie Dupree. And, I think of her as the goddess of biscuits. But she was really one of the first to elevate Southern cooking out of the image of fried chicken and all those things that we do. But back in the day, she started a cooking school. It's very famous. It was one of the first, and still talked about it, richest department store in Atlanta. And she was, ahead of her time. She had one of the early PBS show, Southern Cooking with Natalie Dupree. She did over 300 episodes. She wrote over 30 cookbooks, and I brought one to show you because it's the Southern Biscuit book.
Ah, yes.
But to all our listeners, if you want to learn and talk about biscuits, go to YouTube and look up Natalie's Natalie's takes on doing biscuits. I mean, she was just a fun, down-home cook. And every time, when you look at a video, she just took the bag of flour and stirred it up in the bag and then dumped it right from there. And every time I do that, I've done it ever since our video. I think of her. She lived in Oxford. She helped us found the Southern Foodways Alliance. And wow.
The queen of Southern cooking.
What a loss. And I just urge everybody to read the books, watch the show. You can get them on YouTube and see some of her fun primers on cooking.
All right, before we go to break, we got a couple of callers. We'd like to invite them on now. We have Kevin calling from Charleston, South Carolina, and we are always happy to hear from you, Kevin. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Real well.
Helping here, so.
Good.
So that's always a good thing. Hey, I just wanted to call and comment real quick because back when y'all did your gumbo episode, not too terribly long ago, the previously mentioned roux that y'all were discussing a few minutes ago, I remember you guys talking about that methodology of doing the oven roux.
Right.
couple of nights, so my wife's out of town on business. So, of course, pot roast makes many meals. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot. And so I used the juice from the pot roast after I did some, basically oven-baked roux.
Uh-huh.
And the depth of flavor was absolutely incredible. I'm pretty sure I just, invented the hillbilly mother sauce or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that, a hillbilly mother sauce.
This is
Yeah,
good.
we've needed more mother sauces.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
So you took the
But
drippings from the beef?
Yeah, absolutely. Because after I seared it off in my Dutch oven and everything, I deglazed with a little red wine,
Right.
threw in a little bit of tomato paste, just the basics. But that's the flavor that came from that oven baked roux was out of this world. So I just had to say, hey, I heard it here. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's great. Thanks for calling in. We always appreciate hearing from you, and thanks for listening. Got one other caller in Mobile calling. Lewis is calling from Mobile. What's up, my man?
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to give you a little tip that I use when I'm making my roux so that I can actually step away from it. I use my Instapot, and because the heat cycles on and off, it doesn't burn very easily. You can actually step away from the Instapot while it's making your roux for you, and go to the living room, watch a little bit of the news, or go check your mail. You actually have a chance to step away, and you don't have to stand there and watch your roux stirring it constantly.
All right.
What a great tip. He's speaking my language.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have two choices. You can stand by your roux, or put on the Instapot
It's a Tammy Wynette
and
song.
tour about while your roux is roux-ing. Well, Lewis, that was not Kevin. Lewis, thanks so much for listening and calling. That's a great tip, and we appreciate it, Carol.
Lewis, I'm going to report in. I'm going to have to borrow an Instapot to see if I really want one, but I'm going to try it. Malcolm, I'm just too jumpy to stand on the stove for an hour.
All right, speaking of jumping, we're going to jump to a break and come right back, and we are very excited about Ann Taylor Pittman joining us here via the Zoom. We got a lot to talk to Ann about. So, fellow Mississippian, now residing in the Birmingham, Alabama world, she taught and attended college at Mississippi State. Carol,
We'll claim her.
we'll be right back with Ann Taylor Pittman and more Deep South Dining right here on MPB Think Radio.
MPB Think Radio.
Welcome back to Deep South Dining right here on MPB Think Radio. Carol Palmer, Malcolm White, and today we are excited about our special guest, Carol.
Ann Taylor Pittman, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me back. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Well, Malcolm and I have been talking about having you back ever since the last time.
Yeah, we were like, how soon is too soon?
So how are things in Birmingham? Have y'all had all the weather we have?
We have had some weather. We did not get snow last week like a lot of the Southeast did, but we got it the week before. It was just bitterly, bitterly cold. And so I have the sniffles a little bit. Please forgive me. I've got my tissues here. So hopefully I'll be okay.
Well, in introducing you to our radio audience, there's so much to say. 20 years at Cooking Light, the wonderful book. I know you've written other books, but Malcolm and I both are owners of the Global Pantry, and we both decided it was our favorite cookbook of 2024, and we're still cooking into 2025. But some years ago, you won a James Beard Award for an article you wrote, and the name of the article really introduces you to our audience, and it's Mississippi Chinese Lady Goes Home to Korea. It says a lot.
It does. I mean, that kind of encapsulates my whole story. You know, I'm from Mississippi. Back when I was growing up in the 70s, you know, people weren't as familiar with different Asian cultures. And so I was always known as the Chinese girl or the Chinese lady, although my mother is from South Korea. And in 2012, I went to Korea for the first time to kind of learn more about that side of the family and that side of who I am.
So did you go with your mom, or did you just head out on your own?
So I did not go with my mom. So the funny thing is, the magazine said, my boss said, we'd love to do the story where you go back, where you go to Korea and learn more about your heritage. And my brother decided he was going to go with me. We're Irish twins. He's 10 months older than I am. And we sat down with our mother and asked her if she would go. And she, in this very wise, very Korean sort of way, she said, "No, this is your journey. This is not for me. You two need to go without me." So my brother and I went.
She wanted you to discover it on your own.
She did. Yep. Yeah. So I hope to go back with her sometime, but life.
Yes, it does. I remember I was briefly in Korea on my way to Vietnam one time, and my overwhelming impression, first of all, I was on Korean Air, and the smell of kimchi permeated the aircraft, at the time. It was my first exposure. Then being in Seoul and seeing the giant ceramic pots on balconies in the high-rises where people, fermented the kimchi. And I have been fascinated with kimchi ever since.
Yeah, it is the national dish of Korea. And, you are not Korean if you don't eat kimchi. You have to have it every day.
Well, speaking of kimchi, I mean, that's an example of what your book is filled with on the Global Pantry, showing people, teaching people, opening up doors to new condiments, to new ingredients, to new ideas. I've just loved learning about all sorts of new potentials. We've talked a lot about chili crisp and kimchi and all sorts of stuff here on our
Sambal.
show. Oh, yeah. I mean, you've opened up a world not only to us, but to all of our listeners and to all of the followers and readers that you have. And again, Carol and I, we're always referencing your book and going back to it. And I told her the other day, I said, I think this is the book of the year for us.
Yeah, and we're gonna cook through it because there's so much. I mean, it's kind of a hole in our education because, we're deep South cooks, although we love big flavor. And Malcolm and I are both big fans of condiments.
Never
It's
met
one
one
of the
we didn't like.
and it's something that's bound us together through the years. So this gives us a whole new array of condiments. But one of the reasons we wanted to have you on in January is it's because people are thinking about cooking light after the excesses of the holidays, and you've worked your whole career in that field, so we felt like you would have something to say.
Well, let me first say thank you to both of you, Carol and Malcolm, for your kind words about the Global Pantry Cookbook. That means a lot. But yeah, myself included, we all tend to let loose a little over the holidays. Maybe we need to rein it in come the new year. Everyone kind of, you go big, and then you feel like you need to reset. And I am not a fan of overhauling, change, because I think it's unsustainable.
Right.
But I do think that after all the pies and cakes and alcohol and, whatnot during the holidays, it's time to kind of reset and sort of create your kind of reset your everyday eating habits, create your baseline or reestablish your baseline. So for me, it just involves, and now, I'm a fairly recent, my husband and I are fairly recent empty nesters. So it's very, very simple cooking throughout the week and just trying to eat whole foods as much as possible. There's a lot in the news now about ultra processed foods and how bad they can be for us, but it's just keeping things very, very simple because, everyone's busy. I'm busy. I don't want to spend a ton of time most weeknights on dinner. So it's just cooking very simply and trying to keep it in the whole foods realm. So fresh fruits and vegetables, salads, simple proteins, minimal processed ingredients.
I know Cooking Light magazine was something I used to read a lot. I believe it's merged with something else.
Eating Well. Is it Eating Well?
Yes. So they kind of did away with the monthly publication of Cooking Light, and now they do put out quarterly special interest publications like, Cooking Light slow cooker recipes, special recipe collections, and it's sort of merged with the Eating Well family.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I loved about it, and I was scurrying around looking to see if I had any old copies stashed anywhere, was, just things were so delicious. I did not think of the recipes as like diet. I'm on a perpetual diet, but I didn't think of them as diet recipes. I thought of them as just delicious recipes. And I was wondering how y'all approached, as an editor, how you approach, or what was your philosophy about how you developed the recipes and what type of things you wanted to present to the public.
Right. Well, we tried to keep things within the realm of reality. If you go super, super austere in your diet, you're not going to get buy-in from your family. So if you're wanting to eat healthier and have more vegetables on the plate, maybe you toss those vegetables, say it's like some simple steamed broccoli or green beans. Maybe you toss them with a little bacon fat or some brown butter just to make them more delicious. Because if the food is not delicious, you're not going to want to eat it, and neither is your family. So that was kind of our overall thought process when we created recipes. The kiss of death in the test kitchen was for someone to taste one of the recipes and say, this tastes like diet food. That we would fail the recipe and we would move on. That is absolutely not what we wanted.
That was the litmus test.
Well,
Yes.
Ann, as you were talking about, cooking whole foods, being more healthy, mindful, not spending a lot of time during the week, and all of what you shared, I was thinking about the important role of shopping. I used to never shop, and my wife always did the shopping. But recently, Maybe it's the beginning of the year. I don't know. I've started going to the store more, and I've started to be more aware of the important role of shopping and having these ingredients and having the global pantry, if you would, at home when you get ready to have a light dinner and you don't feel like cooking a big meal and you're just grabbing hummus and pimento cheese and making toast or soups or whatever it might be. But I've really come to appreciate more and more the role of shopping and larder and the pantry to good cooking.
That's true. The pantry is so important. You know, there are going to be nights when maybe you're a meal planner. Not a lot of people are not, and that's fine. And if you're not a meal planner and you go to, you face that question every night, what's for dinner, and you don't have a well-stocked pantry, it is going to be hard. It is going to be hard to pull something together that is nutritious, that's wholesome. You're more likely to order takeout, but simple things like canned beans, they're minimally processed. They can be the foundation of a meal. Interesting pastas, canned diced tomatoes, canned fish, and then all those wonderful global pantry ingredients that we love because they're flavor boosters. They're shortcuts to flavor. You don't have to spend time reducing down stock, say, or some other ingredient to concentrate the flavor. The flavor is already concentrated. So it's a way to very quickly boost the flavor of anything.
I was looking through Global Pantry and looking at some of the dishes that I've done, and there's one, I have the picture, I have it open, I'm going to hold it up for the YouTube people. You did a slow roasted salmon with citrus olive relish. This looks like something that would come from the pages of Cooking Light, and I'm going to hold this up. Is that not gorgeous, Malcolm?
Beautiful.
It's just a simple piece of salmon, and the oranges and the the parsley and the olives just
and it could be any fish, right?
So much beauty. So, do you remember this recipe?
I do remember that. I love that recipe, and I love that technique for cooking.
Can you talk to us a little bit about slow roasting salmon?
So for this, we're talking about a fatty fish like salmon. You could also use something like, if you happen to have access to mackerel, people tend to think of it as very fishy, and when it's fresh, it is not. But you could do it with maybe, say, a tuna steak or swordfish steak. But salmon is so readily available. I love the sustainable farmed salmon. Wild salmon has its place, but I love the fattiness and the sort of unctuous richness of farmed salmon. So you roast it at a low temperature, and I cannot recall off the top of my head if it's like
it's 250.
Okay. You roast salmon fillets at this low temperature for an extended amount of time. You first take it out of the fridge, let it sort of come to room temperature, so you're not sticking refrigerator cold fish in the low oven. But then you roast it for 30 minutes or so, and it gets cooked, but it stays so moist and so rich, and you don't overcook it. You don't get that like white albumin coming out of the fish, like, when you overcook it and you're like, oh no. So it just stays so, unctuous is the word I like to use. And then I finish it with this relish of fresh orange segments and Castelvetrano olives, which I love because they're very buttery and kind of mild and meaty, and a little bit of parsley, and I think there's red onion in there. And it's just this bright pop of flavor that just pairs so nicely with the rich fish. I just love it. It is a great technique. It does take a little longer than broiling or, say, pan searing, but oh gosh.
It's
but
easy.
How long did you keep it in? How long did you cook it for?
About 30 minutes. Is
about
that
30
right?
minutes, yeah. And so you're making the relish while the salmon is
right.
slow cooking at 250.
But that's just a great example of lightening up. Instead of béarnaise sauce or a creamy dill sauce, the citrus relish not only looks fabulous, but it was just such a great counterpoint to the salmon.
Right. I love that. I love playing up rich flavors with a bright finish like that. I love adding something a little bit tangy, a little bit acidic, in this case, a little bit sweet, to kind of counterbalance the richness of the fish.
Let's talk about what other kind of accompaniments or condiments like the relish can you use with protein to lighten up things from instead of using sauces?
Right. So, actually you can use some flavor bomb sauces that are lighter in nature. So instead of, say, a cream sauce, even if you wanted to make like a fresh, this is not in the book, but this recipe, it's more of an idea, like a fresh tomato relish. But let's kick it up a notch by either stirring in some sambal, or you can stovetop smoke the tomatoes. So we have this technique in the book, and it's very simple. You just do it with a disposable aluminum foil pan. You could smoke your tomatoes, and then they'll just have so much flavor without adding a single calorie to them. So that's a fun technique that you can use to create a more flavorful tomato relish or tomato salsa type thing.
So I think I remember this technique. So you get an aluminum, grocery store pan, put your tomatoes in there, cover it with aluminum foil, and then I think poke some holes in it, maybe? I may have made that up.
Say like a rectangular size aluminum disposable pan. You poke some holes on one side of the pan.
Okay.
And then you put a few dry wood chips over the holes in the pan. Then on the other side of the pan, you put the food that you want to smoke. You cover the whole thing with foil, and you put the hole and the side of the pan with the holes in it. You put it on top of the stove eye, and this works with electric coil stoves. It works with gas stoves. It does not work with induction stoves, but it works with traditional electric and gas stoves. And it just takes maybe 3 to 5 minutes to smoke the food.
Wow.
You're concentrating a ton of smoke in a small area, and so it doesn't take long to smoke the food. And I've used that to smoke grits before, like dry, uncooked grits. It's lovely. But like I said, you can smoke vegetables.
Cheese.
Yes,
you can
cheese.
do like a piece of Gouda cheese.
Mm-hmm. And we've smoked fish that way. Anyway, it's wonderful.
Well,
it's
I remember as in my store, the Everyday Gourmet, which I had for many years, and also the Viking Cooking School, we actually sold a commercial product that did this too. It's called a stovetop smoker. But I was fascinated that all you have to do is go to the grocery store and buy, instead of paying like $70 for this kit.
Gizmo.
A gizmo, just getting an aluminum foil pan and punching holes in the aluminum foil.
Yeah.
You target.
My author has one of those pricier stovetop smokers, but that disposable pan technique is something that we created in the Cooking Like Test Kitchen. So,
you're talking about tomatoes, and I adore tomatoes. I deal with high potassium for some odd reason, and tomatoes are right there on the list, so I have to be careful. But fire roasting tomatoes is something I love that I've learned in watching commercial chefs, go from stovetop to oven to really fire roast those tomatoes for a sauce. But I always love that technique, and I don't know if you've ever experimented with that or familiar with that.
I've done something similar, I think, when making a Rick Bayless salsa recipe where he kind of roasts the tomatoes at a very high temperature so they get a little blackened in parts. It is delicious. And that's another thing like smoking, where you're manipulating the food through heat, but you're not adding fat or salt or anything to it other than flavor. And I love techniques like that.
Yeah, roasting peppers.
Love it. I was going to say exactly that.
Yeah, go for it, Mal.
No, that. You got it. I just was thinking about the flexibility and the universal possibilities of the roasted pepper that you can just put on top of your stove on the eye and just roast the skin.
And blister it and then put it in a paper bag and sweat it, peel the, I'm listening to all of these things that I know about, and I'm wondering why I haven't been doing these things lately. And I hope some other people are connecting with this too, because indeed nothing is better than a little roasted pepper sauce or just roasted peppers on something.
Yeah, we had them last night in a quesadilla, and they were blistered just the way I like them. They were delish. These were yellow and red, which are my favorites. I'm not too crazy about the green, but some people love them. So, Ann, I was going to ask you about the world of recipe developing and these test kitchens. I think I've been in one in my life, but it just sounds like a science experiment. And what's that world like? And when you're in there doing recipe development or testing, what's that atmosphere and camaraderie, and what's that work like?
It's one of the best places in the world to be, honestly. If you love food, being in a test kitchen is so fun. If you are a recipe tester or developer, you do have to take meticulous notes. That's the one thing you have to be very disciplined about. As food takes on a life of its own. You can go into a recipe. So let me back up. When I'm developing a recipe, a lot of times I like to start by writing out a skeleton recipe of the ingredients, the amounts, the cooking times that I anticipate working for the recipe. And then from there, as I'm in the kitchen cooking and playing, of course, I have to make adjustments along the way. And if I don't write those down at the very second that those things are happening, so say, I thought a quarter teaspoon of pepper flakes would be enough, but no, in the context of the dish, it needs more. If I don't write that down right then, I'm going to forget it. Likewise with cooking times, all of those kinds of things, amounts, you have to just make sure that you take those notes down. When you're, a recipe is a formula that a good recipe should be something that can go into any person's home and be replicated the way that it was intended. And so in order to achieve that, I think it's very important to take great notes, and it's incredibly important to have someone else cross-test that recipe. So someone else to go behind you and cook the recipe that you developed, that you wrote down, that you typed up, and make sure that it works. Because there could be things you internalize that don't make it onto the paper of the written recipe, and they're crucial to the success of the recipe. If someone else makes a recipe and does not end up with the same result, then you need to go back and try again, make some more notes, maybe figure out what you left out. It's very telling when you have someone else cook your recipe. Right. You'll say, that's not what I intended, or it didn't taste like that when I made it. The texture wasn't like that. Well, something got lost in translation then. So super, super important to cross-test recipes if you're putting them out, if you're publishing them.
So you are writing recipes for the home cook, not the commercial kitchen. And I'm wondering what kind of setup. I mean, are you using a basic stove,
Yes.
regular people's cookware? I mean, talk to us a little bit about what's in your mind when you're developing for the home cook.
Right. So when I worked at Cooking Light magazine, even in the context of a big test kitchen that's in use for one specific reason, everything was outfitted with home appliances. They might have been, they weren't top of the line like Wolf, or they were more like GE or KitchenAid, those types of appliances that are believable and realistic for most home cooks. Likewise with the all the cookware, some of it might be a little elevated, like say all-clad versus a cheap stainless steel pan you might get at a discount store. But everything is meant to be more in line with what a home cook would use in his or her kitchen versus a commercial kitchen. And now when I'm creating recipes for current projects or for this Global Pantry Cookbook, I'm working in my home kitchen, which is pretty humble. It's outfitted exactly the way I need it because this is what I do for a living. So I have my husband is very handy and wonderful. And so, I said, I want an island with these specs, and he built me an island with these specs. So things are easy for me to reach. There's a place for everything. I can stay organized, but it's all, I have a GE stove, a gas cooktop. It's all meant to be, it's not meant to give me some sort of advantage that a home cook wouldn't have. I want what I do in my kitchen to be able to happen in other people's kitchens too.
Yeah, I always envision test kitchens as being these stainless, a laboratory with people in white coats and 5 or 6 people making notes and taking photographs and all of that. Yep. Maybe that's Milk Street on television. I don't know.
I mean, there is a little bit of that. Like they have stainless steel surfaces just because they're easy to keep clean in the high volume of cooking that happens there. You need to make sure it's kept clean, but it's all fairly standard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We've got another caller before we go. We only have a few more minutes. We're going to take this caller. Their comment, I think, is about roux. Today has been focused on roux. And at the end of that, Ann, we wonder if you could talk a little bit about roux. I think Carol asked about healthy roux and such. So I'm not sure who the caller is, but they're calling from 662. We appreciate your listening and calling about your comment about roux.
Good morning, Malcolm. Good morning, Carol. This is Tricia.
Oh,
Tricia, hey. It's Tricia Walker. We just talked about you singing Ode to Billy Joe at the Bobby Gentry tribute.
That was fabulous.
Well, it was great to see y'all down at the Max. I've been listening. I'm on the road this morning. In fact, serendipitously, I'm about to cross the Tallahatchie River Bridge as I'm driving back toward Cleveland. Of course I am. And I thought I should have called earlier, but Carol, I'll tell you what I'll do. When I get a minute, I will rewrite Stand By Your Man, and we'll make it Stand By Your roux.
Okay. I like it. Okay. And we will play it on the radio.
Awesome. Well, I just enjoyed listening to you guys. It was great to see you last week, and I thought I'd give you a quick shout.
So happy to hear from you, Tricia, and it was great to see you at the Riley Center. And sorry I missed you afterwards. It was a lot of people going in a million different directions. But Ann, a lot of interest and curiosity around roux. Do you have any comments about it from your perspective?
I go back and forth. I've done the oven method, and Carol, to speak to some of your challenges with that method, I usually go at a lower temperature for longer just because I am worried about burning it. I will sometimes do fairly traditional. I usually go a little heavier on the flour volume-wise. I'll use maybe a cup of oil to a cup and a third of flour. But, just kind of
Why is that? I saw that when I was researching. Some people had like a cup and a fourth. Or, most people say 1 to 1. Why would you put more flour?
For me, I feel like now, this is going to be very controversial, and I will just say I know that this is not traditional. For me personally, I feel like sometimes the oil separates out a little more if I don't have more flour in there. And that probably means I'm doing something wrong with my roux, but I just like a little more flour. But, I've also done the oven method too. I think the main thing is you just want that wonderful flavor of browned flour. It's sort of the reason that like fried chicken tastes so good. That flour gets browned and toasted in the oil. There's a very distinctive flavor that browned flour has. It's just delicious. So, I'll use both methods. I guess I use about half and half. It just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Sometimes I like standing by the stove, scrolling on Instagram.
Stand by your roux. Well, James Beard Award-winning recipe developer, editor, cookbook author, writer, and fellow Mississippian Ann Taylor Pittman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
We will have you back, and we'll look forward to seeing you out and about. So, ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps us up for today's episode. Deep South Dining is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting's Think Radio. We are funded by the generous contributions of listeners like yourself. Our show is produced by Marissa Vaughn. For Ann Taylor Pittman, my co-host Carol Palmer, I'm Malcolm White saying please stay tuned now for Marshall Ramsey's program, followed by Southern Remedy at 11, and join Carol and I every Monday and every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, right here on Deep South Dining, heard only on MPB Think Radio.
This forecast is underwritten by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Mississippi. Smarter, better healthcare. More at bcbsms.com.